Hello, true duelists. It's yugioh Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, where I'm going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that just didn't. Today's card, the anti-floodgate Royal Decree. Royal Decree was first released in the TCG in Tournament Pack 4 in 2003 as an ultra rare. Yes, as the high pull card in what today would be an OTS pack. What a time 2003 was. Its next reprint would again be in a tournament pack, with it getting a super rare printing this time in Tournament Pack 6 in 2005, before getting a more widespread reprint in Dark Beginning 2 again in 2005, and again as a super rare. Other notable reprints include the common printing in the Warriors Triumph Structure deck in 2005, a rare printing in Retro Pack 2 in 2009, super rare in the Secret Forces in 2015, and an ultra rare printing in 2019 in the Dual Devastator box. Its history on the ban list is entertaining to me. It was unlimited from release up until September 2007. There it was semi-limited, and funnily enough, Jinzo, Royal Decree on Legs, also was semi-limited on the same list. Royal Decree would go back up to unlimited a year later on the September 2008 ban list, where it stayed until March of 2010, where once again it was semi-limited for one single format before coming back to unlimited again in September of 2010, where it has stayed ever since. A continuous trap card, its effect reads: negate all other trap effects on the field. Simple but effective, as they often were back in 2003. An Imperial order for traps, and without the maintenance cost to boot. Royal Decree is a card that's been solid since its inception by the nature of the game, and especially in older formats. Loosely speaking, traps make up a third of the cards in the game, being one of 3 card types, and it shuts down any trap effect on the field. In the early decade of the game, this meant powerful staple traps like Bottomless Trap Hole, Mirror Force, or Torrential Tributes, all cards which could prevent a push or even turn the tables of a game if they resolved by themselves, would be shut off. And by virtue of chaining means that you've not only got the Imperial Order classic of making the opponent neg 1 an advantage from the card being activated, but the card was negated, so you could sit pretty and protected while they just had to deal with the fact that no one was getting their traps for their foreseeable future. And also similar to Imperial Order, as the game aged, the cards it stopped only got better. As the rise of powerful generic trap cards would grow, things like Breakthrough Skill or Dimensional Prison and Fiendish Chain, alongside more modern cards like Infinite Impermanence or Ice Dragon's Prison, all meant that Royal Decree would remain a solid means to stop them. Even a Solemn Trap would be useless against an already face-up Royal Decree, and they're generally considered to be some of the stronger cards in the entirety of the game. This graph from yugiohtopdeck.com shows its usage all the way from 2003 through to 2020, and while it drops off pretty heavily toward 2020, taking a look at the graph in its entirety, one could make the argument that that's as much following the pattern of the last couple of years as it is the card falling off. That's because by the virtue of its effects, the card is best when trap cards are more and more prominent in the format. In the case of, say, Hat format, where most decks played 10 to 14 or so traps, Royal Decree was a safe card to include in the side deck, whereas in 2018, when God abandoned Yu-Gi-Oh! And most of the topping decks were either Goki Link spam or some degenerate FTK, Decree was not a card anyone was even remotely thinking about. I will say that there have been cases where you see it came back strong in no small part due to other floodgates, or at least I feel safe saying that that's why. Vanity's Emptiness is most assuredly one of the cards of all time, and one that has won more games in the least fun way than most other cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can say they have. And it saw a lot of play in Nekroz format. When was Nekroz format exactly? Well, it started in February 2015 when the Secret Forces was released, up until about November 2015 when Konami killed the entire format. Hey, what happened to Royal Decree usage during that time again? Yeah, that seems about right. Now, to be clear, a well-timed Breakthrough Skill could have been killer in that format, and Burning Abyss, Satellar Knight, and Cleafort were all popular decks that had more and more traps in their lineup. Not to mention, Shadal decks would even main deck Mistake at times just to beat the format's best deck. And if you don't know what the best deck in Nekroz format was, well then good luck in life, I suppose, because I'm pretty sure that is the easiest answer one could possibly have to figure out, but still, with enough trap hate, and specifically vanity-stealing games, a card to stop all of that was a pretty good meta call. And you can see similar mindsets replay in different ways across the graph here. A spike shortly after December 2016, so sometime in 2017. When did Paleozoic cards and grass get released? Yeah, that's not really a coincidence there, I can assure you. The card is a solid one, but not one that didn't see competition throughout the game, and I do feel that that is worth mentioning. Jinzo is a Royal Decree on legs. Trap Stun is a normal trap that has the lingering effect to negate trap effects on the field for the turn, and that's not to mention that counter traps to negate trap cards have evolved throughout the years, from 7 Tools of the Bandit, through to Wiretap, and most recently as of this video, Red Reboot, all shutting off trap cards. No one of these is always better than Decree in every situation, and there are benefits and downsides to each. That's including Royal Decree. MST against Royal Decree outs it entirely, whereas against a Trap Stun, it doesn't matter. Jinzo being a monster makes it the only one immune from an end phase MST in general, minus Red Reboot, but Jinzo is itself in danger of being hit by, say, Effect Veiler. And the counter traps are great for being counter traps, but they only stop one trap card, not multiple. Again, minus Red Reboot, but that is a bit of an exception. What I find funniest is that not a single one of them stops trap effects from activating in the graveyard, meaning that Breakthrough Skill is still the best trap card in the game. Don't at me. Being clear, if the card says negate traps on the field, or if they say negate the activation of a trap card specifically, that means they're stopping the effects on the field or the card physically from being played, and not the effects of one activating in the graveyard. This is Yu-Gi-Oh, folks. Make sure you have your law degrees before you start playing. I also want to talk specifically about this card because in my video on Imperial Order, there was a small discussion about this card versus Imperial Order that just got me thinking. Since they're functionally twin cards, for lack of a better term, shutting off the two card types, but they have wildly different opinions in the community. A simple start is while the lack of a maintenance cost may seem better for this card at first, Imperial Order's optional one initially made it significantly better since it meant you could turn it off whenever you wanted, whereas Decree has always been entirely mandatory once it's flipped up until or unless it is itself removed. But more than that, the nature of the two card types, Spell and Trap, are so fundamentally different to their roles in the game that one causes rage and the other one is almost never brought up when speaking of Decree versus Order. Spell cards start plays. They add consistency to your deck, they give boosts in all sorts of ways from attack stats to monsters on boards, they can remove problems and do so many different things that are key to making your plays and enabling your deck, whereas traps are almost universally disruption. Nordic Rhoda aside, the majority of trap cards are exactly that. They're traps. They're meant for the opponent to fall into to hinder them. So when you shut one card type off in spells, it's seen as stopping the game from being played and stopping you from using your deck. Whereas when you shut off the other one, traps, it's not seen so much as stopping the opponent as it is protecting yourself. And lastly, I'll just talk about the card today. In 2022, when the video was made, modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Has accelerated to a pretty nutty point, to use the appropriate scientific term, and floodgates are plentiful. If a deck can, it will side or even main a floodgate that doesn't hurt it but can seriously hurt an opponent. Rivalry of the Warlords, Goes and Match, There Can Be Only One, Skill Drain, and Imperial Order Light Anti-Spell Fragments. Each of these can kill in the right matchup or even just duel, and while Royal Decree can and does stop each of them, when the opponent flips them on your first turn when you're going second, you can't afford to wait till turn 4 to win against the top decks. You need to answer those floodgates then and there, which is why things like Harpy's Feather Duster or Lightning Storm are just more well played and more popular outs to these threats because the game is so much faster than it was in the past. It'll most likely slow down enough at some point in the future, or at least I believe so, or maybe a deck like Paleozoic will become popular enough that this card will slide its way back into more side decks in the future, but until that time, it's fallen out of favor thanks to the speed of whatever the fuck Konami was on when they printed Tearlaments and the Ishizu cards. Overall, Royal Decree has been a reliable side deck card for just shy of 2 decades, and a way to protect your plays and seal the deal when you're attacking for game or summoning your favorite, Blue Eyes clone that there's 2 million of. It'll be a staple of cards to pick up whether playing older formats, or if my hopium huffing ass is right, even in a future format or two. And in my opinion, will remain the least hated quote-unquote floodgate card in the game that actually sees play. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Royal Decree. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats, so you too can become a true duelist.